All right, thank you. And I'm going to officially welcome everyone. Thank you very much for attending tonight's panhandlemanatee.org volunteer training session. And I'm joined tonight by our current intern, Jessica Clark, or Jessie. Jessie, do you want to say hi?
Hi, my name's Jessie. Like Jessica said, I'm the current NWF intern for this program. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, but I currently live in Mobile. I am a senior at the University of South Alabama, graduating in 2 weeks. I'm a marketing major with a marine science minor, and I'm just so excited for new volunteers this season.
Good. And Tucker, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Hi, I'm Tucker. I'm a former, just graduated from the University of West Florida with my degree in marine biology. I've done a lot of stuff in the past with outreach, and so I'm really excited to be able to, hop on and do this internship and, educate some people.
Excellent. And then Sarah might also be joining us this summer.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'll also be graduating in a couple of weeks, but I'll be graduating from Jacksonville University over in Jacksonville, Florida. And I have experience working with visitors for test tanks and marine biology.
And it's from Pensacola too. So, okay. We are going to kick things off. This is relatively informal, and it's really an opportunity for you all to get to understand the program and get comfortable with the information with manatees and seagrass and the things that you would potentially be speaking with the public about. If you have any questions, you can either unmute and shout them out. You can put them in the chat. You can try to use the raise hand function, and Jessie and I will try to keep an eye on that. But then there will also be time for questions at the end. And if you are watching this recording after the fact and you have questions that aren't answered in this presentation, then please email them to panhandlemanatee.org@gmail.com. So this program, it is a partnership between the Pensacola Perdido Bays Estuary Program and National Wildlife Federation. The reason why we're doing this project is a couple-fold. The Pensacola Perdido Estuary Program, it's a new program in Northwest Florida that is coming up with an entire comprehensive management plan for the two-bay system. But they've identified wildlife and habitat needs as something that they want to address through this program, improving seagrass habitat, providing healthy ecosystems, and supporting wildlife, including threatened and endangered species. So that's how this project fits into it. Our objectives are to better protect manatees and seagrass from human-related threats using increased awareness, education, and also getting a better understanding of manatees and when and how they're in the area. Because with this better information, it will allow all members of the community to better enjoy as well as protect these resources. So the presentation is going to start with a little bit of background information. We'll be teaching a little bit about manatees as well as seagrasses. And then we'll get into kind of the nuts and bolts of how outreach will be taking place. But to start with a little Manatee 101, Jessie was going to give us a little summary.
So the Florida manatees are known as the West Indian manatee. They live in shallow tropical and subtropical waters like bays, estuaries, rivers, and lagoons. They are herbivores, so they eat seagrass and freshwater vegetation. That SAV is submerged aquatic vegetation, so that's what they feed off of, different seagrasses. Adults typically reach about 10 feet and around 1,000 pounds. And they have a low thermal tolerance, so that's based on seasonal distribution. So they come into our area during the summer and they go back during the winter to different springs. They're concentrated at winter warm waters, and they have a wide range during the summer from Texas to New Jersey. Next slide. the life history of a manatee is going to be, they form mating herds when they are trying to produce young. Females can give birth to a calf every 3 to 4 years, and the calves stay with their mom for 1 to 2 years. And manatees can typically live up to 20 to 40 years in the wild, but we have seen them live up to 60 in captivity. So the status and threats of manatees, they are listed as a threatened species. And this is because of watercraft and boat strikes, which cause about 25% of their mortality. And they're also experiencing habitat needs with the loss of warm water in certain areas and the loss of seagrass, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that, which Jesse is going to bring up in a minute as well. Right now, actually. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think a lot of folks have been hearing in the news about this manatee mortality event, a huge die-off going on the east coast of Florida and the area around Brevard County. In a typical year, maybe 400 to 600 manatees die, or dead manatees are recovered, with a roughly equal numbers on both the East Coast and the West Coast. And as Jesse mentioned, the watercraft related mortality accounts for about 20 to 25% of that annual mortality. There have been a couple of years when there's been either red tide or cold stress or a combination of those factors, when the number of dead manatees recovered exceeds that 400 to 600. But last year there was just record crushing mortality when over 1,100 dead manatees were recovered. The majority of these, about 3/4, were on the East Coast. Many of those, as you see, were not necropsied, meaning they're just too many dead manatees for the state of Florida, who does these manatee necropsies or autopsies basically to even collect them. But again, the majority of them were over on the Atlantic coast and centered around the area of the Space Coast in Brevard County. So on the East Coast, the middle of the East Coast of Florida, it's an area called the Indian River Lagoon, and there are 2 power plants there that the manatees hang out in the wintertime to stay warm. But as Jesse mentioned, during the winter, they're aggregated at warm water. During the summer, they're widely dispersed throughout the coastal areas. Well, this Indian River Lagoon, Mosquito Lagoon, Banana River normally has extensive, lush, beautiful seagrass beds that the manatees feed on. But because of poor water quality, too many nutrients in the water, over the past 10 or 15 years, there have been a series of algal blooms. When there's too much algae in the water, it blocks the sunlight from reaching the seagrass that grows on the bottom of the bays. And just seagrass, they're plants, they need sunlight to live, and the seagrasses die. Normally, if there was just one algal bloom and one seagrass die off, the seagrass could come back. But because this happened over a series of years, the seagrass has literally been decimated, and it is a desert out there, and there's nothing left for the manatees to eat. And it is now virtually a desert. And as a result, then manatees, hundreds and hundreds of manatees have been starving to death. This past winter, the state of Florida and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did start a supplemental feeding program, but that was a very controlled, specific situation. And it's really important for folks to understand that that does not mean manatees everywhere should be fed. That was a very specific situation. And we're going to talk about that later when we start talking about FAQs and messaging to the public and things like that. But going back to Manatee 101 and talking about their normal range, historically, as Jesse mentioned, manatees were found on both coasts of Florida, but really they were restricted more to the peninsula. However, in the last 1 or 2 decades, they've been seen more and more recently in the northern Gulf. Dolphin Island Sea Lab started a manatee sighting network quite a few years ago, where they are asking the public to call them and report manatee sightings. And as a result, getting a better picture of manatee distribution in the Northern Gulf, including Northwest Florida. In addition, the US Geologic Survey has done some studies where they satellite tag manatees and track their movements. What they are doing is actually tagging the manatees in Crystal River during the winter time, and then looking to see where they go up in the Northern Gulf during the summertime. And as a result, they're learning, yes, manatees are definitely using the area more regularly. It could be related to the fact that there's actually more manatees, again, before this die-off event happened. And again, the die-off is isolated to the East Coast, but on the West Coast, manatees are doing quite well. So between maybe more manatees, as well as a phenomenon known as tropicalization, and that is as the climate changes and things warm up, the distribution of many species, including manatees, is shifting, and they're using the areas in Northwest Florida and further more and more often. So that's a little bit of information on manatees. I also wanted to provide a little background information on seagrass. So if any of you have spent time out on the water, fishing, especially, you might understand and appreciate that seagrass is very important, not just as a manatee food source, but for its ecological value. I mean, it helps maintain the clarity. The leaves actually trap sediment and particles in the water and make the water more clear. The seagrasses are also, with their roots and rhizomes, they're able to stabilize the sediment a little bit and help with erosion. But also very important, they provide food and shelter for a whole ecosystem, for a whole host of species, fish and crustacean and shellfish. That's why this manatee or the seagrass die-off on the East Coast is so problematic. I mean, when you have 1,000, hundreds and hundreds of these 1,000-pound animals showing up dead, people take notice. But what they forget about is all these other little critters that depend on those seagrass habitats are also being negatively impacted. So here in Florida, we have 3 main species of seagrass. And so this is your very quick seagrass tutorial. Probably the most common type of seagrass, the first one to appear in new areas, is called shoalgrass, also known as haliduli or haliduli wrightii. And it's very thin and wispy, and it's the first type of seagrass to come into an area that's been disturbed. The next, another species is called manatee grass or Syringodium. It's similar to the shoalgrass in that it's got thinner blades, but the blades actually have a circular cross section. And if you feel it, it feels definitely more coarse than the shoalgrass or haliduli. But you can actually, if you touch it, you can roll the blades of the seagrass between your fingers. And I always think of it's round like a syringe. So Syringodium, syringe, I don't know. It works for me to help keep them straight. And then the third more common type of seagrass is turtle grass, also known as thalassia. That one looks very distinctly different. It looks very similar to tape grass, which is actually a freshwater plant, but it's got that wide blade. It looks just like strips of tape. These species of seagrass are found throughout the coastal areas all along the Florida coast. They need to be completely submerged. They can be in marine or estuarine waters, which is a mix of fresh and salt water. All sorts of habitats, bays, lagoons. They're even found in the open Gulf of Mexico off the continental shelf. So locally in Pensacola Bay, there was a 95% decline in seagrass from the 1950s to the early 2000s. That was due to a lot of legacy pollutants, contaminants, things like that. But because of a number of efforts underway from the local utilities and cleaning up these industrial sites, there was actually an increase in seagrass in some areas of the bay, including Big Lagoon and Santa Rosa Sound. And on this graph, you can see even the areas that do have seagrass, even where there is continuous coverage, these green areas, you see there's just not a whole lot of seagrass out there in our bay system. And that's why it's so important for us to take care of it, us as stewards of the environment, and in doing outreach with the public. The number of factors or stressors that impact seagrass growth, as I mentioned, seagrasses need sunlight, and with poor water quality or poor water clarity, blocks the sunlight, and that can negatively impact seagrass. Again, those algal blooms also will block the sunlight. You know, it's interesting because you think about your lawn and you apply fertilizer to your lawn. So, you know, fertilizer and nutrients are good. They do, in fact, help seagrass grow, but too many nutrients help other types of plants, the algae, grow, and then it takes over and blocks the sunlight. But propeller scars made by motorboats and fishing trails from anglers who are actually walking from the shoreline through the seagrass into deeper waters can also destroy seagrass. And although there are some restoration efforts underway locally, in general, seagrass restoration is very slow, it's very expensive, and has limited success. Some projects that have worked are things like living shorelines, where oyster bars or breakwaters are constructed to block wind and wave action and provide a quiet area where the seagrass can recolonize. And Project Green Shores right along the Bayfront Parkway is a great example of that. Phase 1, which was constructed about 10 or 15 or more years ago, there is actually seagrass growing on the inside of those breakwater areas. And I don't know if you've noticed lately, but Project Green Shores Phase 2 actually is being constructed right now. I think the construction was just finished, and you can start to see some areas where some of the sediment was built up. There were some shoreline grasses planted to stabilize that, and the hope is now seagrass will start to colonize some of those areas inshore of those spoil areas that have been built up. There have also been some actual restoration efforts, actually restoring seagrass. One project was done at the Naval Live Oaks Preserve, which is right at the foot of the bridge to Pensacola Beach. And this is an area that was being heavily impacted by anglers, by shoreline fishermen that were walking through the seagrass and making trails. And again, that type of seagrass restoration is done one little plug at a time. It's slow, it's expensive, and it's not successful very often. That's why protection is so important. Enter Panhandle Manatee.org. So as I mentioned before, our goal is to increase awareness and protection of manatees and seagrass throughout the area. We've developed a number of messages such as go slow where seagrasses grow because manatees are below. If any of you grew up, know the song from the 70s, there's a nice little jingle that goes with that. We have several target audiences that we are trying to engage with our messages: boaters, anglers, local residents and visitors, coastal communities, rental properties, water-related businesses. You know, where we're doing these types of outreach and delivering these messages depends on which particular community or audience we're trying to reach. But it stands to reason when we want to talk to anglers, we go to fishing piers. When we want to talk to boaters, we go to boat ramps and marinas. And for all the other audiences, you know, we've got to go where they are. So we've identified a number of target sites. This doesn't mean that we're not open to others, but we do already have a list of places that either we started targeting last year or we'd like to target this year. This is actually just a blow up of kind of the NAS Pensacola, the western end of Gulf Breeze and Pensacola Beach. But, you know, zooming out a bit, we do have sites throughout the entire watershed, from Orange Beach up to Perdido River, up into Blackwater River, and East River, all the way over to Navarre. So there's some place for everyone. If you say, oh, well, I live over here, that's okay. I'm sure we've got a site near you. So as of now, this is planned to be a 3-year project, and we are in year 2. We started last year and are getting ready and went through to the fall. But again, because of manatee seasonal distribution, they're not around so much in the winter. So we shut it down, and now we're getting ready to pick it up again. Generally, we do our boater outreach on the weekends in the mornings. Angler outreach, this year we want to try to do it on Sunday mornings, as well as maybe going out some weekdays, and then trying to reach the businesses, local residents and visitors, trying 1 or 2 days a week to hit those audiences. For some of those folks, maybe weekdays are going to be the best time to reach them. How are we actually doing this outreach? One-on-one, one person at a time, one conversation at a time, with the boaters and the anglers, with individual businesses. We are hoping to be able to reach more of the visitor centers and folks just by dropping off materials. If we can speak to, say, tour boat operators and folks that do water related businesses that rent out stand-up paddleboards or kayaks, you know, if we can get them to deliver the messages to their customers, that would help amplify the message. We're hoping to reach more coastal communities, maybe get on Nextdoor, neighborhood Facebook pages, get things posted in community newsletters, again, to try to amplify those messages a bit more. So when we're doing the boater education and the outreach, we are handing out boaters kits. So I am going to stop sharing for just a minute so I can do a little show and tell and show you the little boaters kit. So this is what we are handing out when we go to the boat ramps. It's a little tote bag. And in there we've got a, there we go, a boater's guide on waterproof paper. We've got a floating keychain that says "Go slow where seagrasses grow." We've got a refrigerator magnet that asks people to, there we go, to report manatee sightings. We also have other materials that we give out, such as card magnets. Oh, also in the boaters kits, polarized sunglasses that also have the "Go slow where seagrasses grow" messages on that. This year, we are looking to get some additional materials. We also have some brochures or little rack cards. Going to be doing some koozies instead of the floating keychains. Window decals that are cut out like a manatee that have that panhandle manatee.org URL. We had some materials left from last year. We've ordered some more. We've got all kinds of goodies to share. So that is what you are giving out to boaters. Let's make sure that this is, there we go. And here's some of the stuff that I just went through, and this allows you to see it a little bit better, examples of some of the materials and messages. It's really 2 main messages that we're delivering. One is "Go slow where seagrasses grow," and the other is encouraging people to report manatee sightings. With a better understanding of when and where manatees are in the area, they can be better protected. Watercraft collisions will be reduced. And it's really, I mean, there's been very little science on manatees in Northwest Florida. And this will provide, even though it's considered citizen science and anecdotal information, it's definitely a starting place. So those are the things that you're going to be talking to the public about. So when you're talking to boaters and WRB, water related businesses, you're going to focus on that seagrass safe messaging. But for all the audiences, boaters, anglers, residents, you're asking them to report manatee sightings using this special website, panhandlemanatee.org. Also sharing general information about manatees, asking them not to feed or give manatees water, asking them to keep the bay clean, picking up trash because it is an entanglement and ingestion risk for manatees. A lot of boat ramps and fishing piers have actual PVC tubes that are monofilament recycling bins. And also, again, to address those nutrients, to try to keep fertilizers, pesticides, pet waste, yard waste out of the waterways. So you've heard me mention panhandlemanatee.org, this special site for reporting manatee sightings. Well, how exactly does it work? So if you go to a browser and you type in panhandlemanatee.org, it redirects you to a page on the new estuary programs website. People going won't really see that, but just telling you that's how it works. And then you've got a little bit of information about manatees. Did you know they're being found in the area? And then report sightings, click here. So if you click on the report a manatee sighting or the Manatee Sighting Network button, same thing, it's a redirect to the Dolphin Island Sea Lab Manatee Sighting Database. And it's a very simple and straightforward form where folks can go and enter the information about the manatee they're seeing, their name and contact information, as well as the date, the location, the number of manatees, and the activity. So the location, how do people know where they are when they see a manatee? Well, if they see a manatee from their, condo balcony, obviously they can enter the address. If they're at a beach or a boat ramp, they know where they are. But when they're out on the water, maybe they don't know exactly where they are. Maybe nobody has a LORAN unit, and do they have a GPS unit? Yes, everybody that has a smartphone has a GPS unit, whether they know it or not. And this is something that we want the volunteers to be telling folks, hey, how do I report? How do I get a location? Well, you just open up Google Maps. You go to your approximate location on the waterway, you click to drop a pin, and then down on the bottom will be a latitude and longitude that then you can enter on the sighting form. So that's kind of the basic messaging. Don't worry, I'm not just going to say, okay, there you go, I told you what to do, now go forth and do it. No, there's more information. But wait, there's more. But I do just want to make sure that everyone understands how to get involved. I have created 2 QR codes. These are also QR codes. We're going to be printing these out and having them a laminated card with them. So that way, when you are talking to volunteer or to the public at these various sites, if anybody is excited about the project and wants to get involved, you can hold up this card with these QR codes and they can scan them and either how to get involved or how to schedule a shift. The how to get involved QR code will take them to the same form that you all filled in to RSVP for the training. And how to schedule a shift will take you to our signup.com site where you can actually schedule yourself for a shift, which I'm going to be going over with you guys in a little bit more detail shortly. So again, just to give you a little bit more information to help you get your brain wrapped around what we're asking of you as volunteers. So what level of commitment? This says at boat ramps, but really it's outreach anywhere, any participating as a volunteer in any of the outreach activities. We're asking you to commit to 2 shifts per month of about 2.5 or 3 hours per shift. You could do a 5-hour shift, but most of the shifts are 2.5 or 3 hours. You will not be on your own. You will always be with a member of the Manatee outreach team, either intern or staff, until you get to, if you get to a point where you're comfortable going out on your own after you've been doing it for many, many shifts, we can talk about that. But initially, yes, you will not ever be on your own. If you're wondering if it's going to be hot and if there's going to be shade, Yes, it will be hot, but yes, there will be shade. We have a little tent or awning that we set up at all of our outreach sites. What are you going to be doing specifically for the boater outreach? You're going to be speaking to boaters who are launching or waiting to launch at ramps, highlighting the Seagrass safe boating, telling them how to report manatees, and distributing the boaters kits. You might be wondering, do I have to approach the boaters, or are they going to come over to me? Well, probably some of both. We have banners that say free boaters kits, and that definitely attracts attention. But a lot of times when boaters are launching, they have to wait for their turn at the ramp, wait in line. That's a great time to go over and try to engage them in a conversation. If you're worried about bothering them, we don't want you to bother folks. So just read the mood. If they seem receptive, then talk to them. If they don't seem to be receptive, then you can say, thank you very much. If you're wondering how many of these boater kits we're trying to give away, we don't have a real target number. We're really focusing on engagement and delivering messages, not giving away free stuff. We do ask our volunteers and the teams to record information such as the number of interactions, the number of people, that's the number of people you're talking to, not just the number of boats or boat captains, but the number of people in the group that actually seem to be listening. We want to know the number of kits that are being distributed, and then the number of hours that are spent in these outreach activities. So what questions or responses should you be prepared for? Well, one question or one reaction you might get is people saying, oh, manatees, yeah, I once saw a manatee over in, and then fill in the blank. So you can share with them that if they remember where and when, exactly where, exactly when they saw it, please ask them to please go to panhandlemanatee.org and report it. If they have a photo and they know that they were at, the Pensacola Beach fishing pier when they saw a manatee swim by and they had a photo, they've got the date and timestamp on their photo, they know where they were, boom. That is definitely, they're definitely able to enter that into the panhandlemanatee.org. And again, I just mentioned that they can either enter a nearby address or drop a pin and get location coordinates that they can then enter into the sighting form. Sometimes folks are afraid, oh, if I report manatees, that means there's going to be manatee slow speed zones, and I don't want slow speed zones. It's important to convey that reporting manatees will not result in slow speed zones. And actually, with more information, manatees and boaters will be able to coexist. It's watercraft deaths, not manatee presence, but dead manatee presence is what leads to speed zones. So with more information on manatees, we'll have more awareness as where they are. Therefore, there will be fewer collisions, and therefore there will be less likely to get zones. It's pretty amazing how folks that are initially are like, oh no, this is a bad thing. And then when you explain to them, no, we're going to know better because people report sightings, will know better where they are, less chance of getting zones. You actually can see their mindset shift. It's pretty exciting. Again, sometimes people take a very, far extreme attitude. Oh, they're going to close down the bay. They're going to shut down boating. Again, goal is not to close the bay or stop boating. We want more information on when and where manatees are in the area so boaters can be on the lookout and minimize collision. You do not have to worry about memorizing all of the answers. I have a link to an FAQ document you can take with you, but it's the type of thing that as you get through it more, you'll get more comfortable with it. Sometimes when folks hear that they get free polarized sunglasses, they get really excited and they would like to know if they could get an extra pair. And you tell them, no, we really want to reach as many boaters as possible. So only giving out one kit with one pair of sunglasses per vessel, but encourage you to go to a local retailer and get an extra pair of glasses. That's a great way to spot and avoid seagrasses. Those polarized sunglasses, it really does make it easier to see manatees and seagrasses. You can buy them at Walmart for, $10. I actually saw them in Dollar Tree for $1.25 just the other week. So there you go. I don't know how good they are. I have not taken them out on the water, but it's an option. Actually, I should probably buy a whole bunch of those because that's a lot less than what I'm paying for in my boaters kits. Anyhow, when boaters ask how can they avoid damaging seagrasses, this is really important messaging. I really hope folks ask you how they can avoid damaging them. Unless it's necessary to reach the destination, please avoid operating in seagrass. Look for the darker colored bottom as an indication, polarized sunglasses, standing up higher, things like that. When you're in seagrass, if you find yourself in seagrass, slow down, trim or tilt the motor up as much as you can. Look for signs that you are actually causing damage, like muddy water or prop blades of grass. And if you actually run aground, shut off the engine, trim the motor up completely, and push or pull the boat into deeper water. Some boat, if it'd be great if these folks want to engage in a conversation and really get a better understanding. Well, isn't it better to be on a plane and draw less draft? So if any of your boaters and that, when you're putting along slow and the boat is settled in the water, it's drawing draft. That's how low in the water the hull is. But as you go faster, you get up onto what they say, you get up onto a plane where the hull of the boat is skimming across the top of the water. However, the propeller is still in the water, and you can acknowledge, yes, slow speed does draw more draft, but running slower allows more time to immediately respond if you do end up in trouble, if you end up in a seagrass bed. So, yes, you do draw less draft, but that does not mean that it's better for seagrass. A lot of folks think, well, they know about planting sod in their yard. And well, can't you just replant seagrass? No, it's not like sod that you can lay down. It needs to be planted one plug at a time. In addition, if you don't fix the underlying issues, the replanted seagrass is not going to survive either. Some folks are actually, we got this quite a bit. We were not expecting this, but when we initially approached folks and said, oh, would you like a free boaters kits? Sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to make a donation. You say, no, it really is free. We're not asking for a donation. We are not asking for donations. We are not asking for money. We are not selling these things. If folks want to help, the best way to help is by reporting manatee sightings and go slow where seagrasses grow. If they are really insist, then thank them for their generous offer and ask them to see the site captain, who is the intern that is working with you. We are accepting donations. I mean, literally, we try to be like, no, that's okay. You don't have to. If they insist, then we are accepting the donations, and actually we're using it then to get, as petty cash to get water for you guys or other little things that we might need along the way, water, snacks, additional quick printing of brochures, things like that. Again, if they want to help out, please also encourage them to volunteer and have them scan the QR code for more information. Again, if they want to get involved, that's super, scan the QR code and that'll take them right to a form that they can sign up. There are manatee signs available if somebody asks for, say, oh, I've got a dock, can I get a manatee sign for it? Yes, there are some signs currently. Dolphin Island Sea Lab and Save the Manatee Club has them, but I am working on getting some for panhandlemanatee.org and ask them to just email us and we will try to see what we can do. Our email address, again, panhandlemanatee.org is the website. So panhandlemanatee.org@gmail.com is our email address. Sometimes boaters, anglers, they complain about the Marine Patrol officers, the law enforcement. And anytime I hear a negative comment about our law enforcement officers, I just remind them that, Florida, it's a huge state. We've got thousands of miles of water to be covered, square miles, and only a limited number of officers to do it. And the Marine Patrol officers are some of the lowest paid and hardest working law enforcement officers in the state. And they can't be everywhere all the time. So really need voluntary compliance from citizens who care about protecting the environment. Again, because of the news and hearing about the starving manatees, a lot of people are mistakenly thinking that it's a good idea to give manatees food or fresh water. And we just need to really reinforce that, nope, manatees are wild animals. We don't need to be attracting them to humans. The situation on the east coast of Florida is extremely unique and does not apply here in Northwest Florida. Similarly, if they ask about, oh, why aren't they just feeding the starving manatees? And again, to make the point, can't they feed them more? Why is this such a big deal? It's not just about the starving manatees on the East Coast. The entire ecosystem is in trouble, and manatees are just one symptom. So I'm sure that there might be other questions that come up. There are a bunch of these questions in the FAQ document. If you all think of questions that you think might come up that haven't been answered, or you hear something while you're out there, just again, you can always refer people to go to the panhandlemanatee.org@gmail.com and send an email there. So for next steps, you all have completed that, hopefully you completed that volunteer information form and indicated the area of outreach where you might be interested, as well as what geographical areas you might be interested in. If you want to make a change to something that you might have filled in earlier, you can either email panhandlemanatee.org@gmail.com, or you can fill in a new form and we'll just merge the results. And then as far as signing up for volunteer shifts, if you worked with us last year, we had a goofy Excel spreadsheet system, but we have a new system now through signup.com. And unfortunately, it's not a particularly easy to remember URL. Maybe I'll try to come up with some clever thing that's the abbreviation for, but I'm going to show you that website in just a minute. We haven't picked locations for the entire summer, only a couple weeks in advance. So if you do want to sign up for something way in the future, it might, for a date way in the future, the location might still be TBD. But you can also follow us on social media, Facebook or Instagram at Panhandle Manatee. And you can also, we ask you to recruit friends. Anytime you're coming out and volunteering, you're always welcome to bring a friend along with you. So again, the next step, the QR code takes you to the form you already filled in. The how to schedule a shift QR code takes you to this signup.com. So this is, as I mentioned, it's a new system that we are doing this year. It goes through this form. You can look at a calendar view, you can scroll down and see the dates and shifts, but for each date, it will list where it's going to be, whether, there's a spot for volunteers to sign up, interns to sign up. For boat ramps, we've got 3 shifts basically on the weekends, a Saturday from 8 till 11, Saturday 10:30 to 1, and a Sunday 10 to 1. We're also going to be doing the fishing pier Sunday from 10 to 1. And the community outreach, we do not have a regular schedule like set, Mondays at 9 a.m. or anything like that. The interns will reach for folks that they're interested in doing community outreach or reaching out to water related businesses. They'll be reaching out either one-on-one, or we'll send an email being like, hey, we're going out on this day, this time, who's interested in going with us? There'll be a little bit more direct communication until we kind of find a rhythm. And again, after we get this season kind of up and running, we'll probably add some more of those community outreach shifts to the calendar. So you can either just keep checking back on the volunteer, the signup.com for those shifts, or just look for those emails. So, got a number of resources I'm going to send. Jesse actually will probably be sending these to you, the FAQ. I have to change this link, a link to the volunteer sign up, a map that shows where all those different sites are that I told you about, a picture of those different QR codes, as well as just other information for how to reach out and contact us. So that is what I wanted to cover. I see we have a couple of questions that popped up in the chat. Jesse has also been posting in the chat links to those forms, the FAQ, the maps, the sign up. So Chris asked if seagrass has to be planted by divers, and if so, are there any current projects going on? We, National Wildlife Federation, we are not involved in any seagrass planting efforts. The only seagrass planting effort that I am aware of in the Pensacola Perdido area right now is that naval live oaks, which I actually think is done. I personally have never done seagrass planting, and I don't know if they use divers or snorkel. I know there's actually a machine that was invented to mechanically, it's like got like a wheel, and just what you put the plugs in the wheel, kind of like a water, what do they call those water wheel things? Is that what it's called, a water wheel? But as it spins and it just whoop, plugs it. But I don't know. Chris, if you're interested in learning more about that, I can, we can maybe reach out to Rick O'Connor and Christopher Lindy, who are local IFAS Sea Grant Extension agents, and they might know. I also see that we are joined by Dylan O'Brien, and Dylan is another one of our current interns. And if you look at the sign up sheet now, you'll actually see Dylan has already has his name on a couple of shifts. So Dylan, you want to say hi?
Hey everyone, I'm Dylan.
You can say a little bit more about yourself too.
So I recently graduated from college in environmental science with the help of this program, actually. Spending most of my time doing this and working, and
Awesome. Yep. And Dylan and Jesse are both finishing up their internship sometime in June. So I did want to just quickly, I'll just do a show you again this signup.com site. And again, you can either look at a calendar view and see, again, this is a, you know, as an administrator view, this is not exactly what it would look like, but when you click on a date, then you can see, for instance, so Dylan is going to be at Navy Point. He'll be there from 8 to 1, and he's looking for 2 volunteers to join him at Navy Point from 8 to 11 and 2 from 10:30 to 1. And when you go in as a user, not as an administrator, there will be a little spot where you can click to sign up, to add your name. So I am going to stop the recording, but I would, if there's anybody who's watching this recording at a later time that has any additional questions, then please send them to panhandlemanatee.org@gmail.com. And for anyone who's attending live, then you can ask questions now.